My name is Danny Carnicella. I'm with the Nutley Board of Education. We also have a couple other board members here. Lisa Dancheck-Martin, Mr. Ryan Klein, our superintendent of schools, Dr. Julie Blazer, our communications director in the back, Karen Gamins. Karen Gamins, sorry. It's Saturday. It's Saturday. And we also have our architect from DeCaro and Reno, Dr. Joe. I'm just all over the place. But I didn't have enough coffee yet this morning. So our goal today is to do the same presentation that we did a couple of weeks ago at the middle school. And it's really a review of what the current proposals are that you'll see on the ballot with the expansion of the school project. It is very similar in that we have not changed our overall need. We've just split it up into two separate questions. The first question is representative of all of the instructional space that we need to accomplish a few things. First would be to bring our 6th grade over to the middle school to increase their educational rigor. We're currently piloting a middle school model approach at the 6th grade level at the elementary schools with the expectation that at some point the 6th graders would eventually be at the middle school to complete that pilot with the team models that take place under that instructional piece. Number 2, it would eliminate the trailers at Washington, at Yanaqua, and it would also eliminate a need for additional trailers, and it would provide a true safe space for our youngest learners at the elementary levels. Also, it's going to create space for us at the high school, because as our population numbers continue to grow and the way that we deliver instruction is going to allow us to add some additional programming at the high school that's going to continue to keep us competitive for years to come with the high-performing districts in the state. Okay. Proposal 1, as you see here, actually works out to be a $56.8 million bond. This again is for the instructional space. You'll see, oh, there you go. So at Washington, we're going to be adding 6 classrooms with bathrooms and an elevator for ADA access. At Yanaqua, it'll be 7 classrooms with a true secure entrance that is a man trap that is attached to the administrative offices. Currently at Yanaqua, we have a temporary man trap, but we still have to, it's not connected to the administrative office. So once the person or individual that's coming in to be into that building, they still have to be escorted by somebody in that building. Whereas once the secure entrance is in place, they would be screened at the administrative office before they go any further into the building.
Is there a question at this point?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Why do we need additions on those 2 schools?
We'll talk about that. If that's the question.
We were told when they put in all the apartments, there would be no expansion.
Yes, thank you.
And now all of a sudden, we're getting hit in the face with this.
Okay, so let's do this.
We'll talk
Let's
about
get through.
there's actually 5 reasons, not
Yeah.
just the apartments.
Correct.
Well, that's the most important one. We were
So-
told there wouldn't happen.
Correct. So this is what we would like to do. We would like to try to get through the presentation because I think that some of those questions will be answered. And then if those questions, and I recorded that question in my mind. So if we don't answer that fully, we will talk about the 5 reasons as to why we're in the situation that we're in right now and the need for the expansion. And at that point, if we need to expand further, we can do that. That sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thanks. At John Walker Middle School, we're going to be adding 20 classrooms, a multi-purpose space, as well as a secure entrance, which we do not have there. And Yanaqua and the John Walker Middle School are the only 2 schools at this time that do not have a true secure entrance, okay? We've done temporary secure entrances at both of those schools after the February 26th incident with the Parkland shooting. So, and then in Nutley High School, as we talked about, classroom and media center renovations. This would be phase 1 of the high school if proposal 2 does not pass, but it was designed to give us a couple of extra classrooms at the high school.
Now, I'm just gonna jump in on this, you jump in too. So this question always comes up. The total amount of the bond is that $56 million number. We have to bond for the whole amount. However, and see, people ask this question too, why isn't the state giving us money to fund this? If this is a big issue, why doesn't the state pay for it? The state doesn't pay for it up front. What they do is review our plans for construction and rehabilitation. They offer what's called debt service aid. That debt service aid is a payment that comes every year to offset our costs at about, and I'm gonna say about 40%. 40 cents on the dollar, and I say that because there's different amounts for new construction than rehab. That total amount for question one is the $8.3 million. We do not, again, get that in a lump sum all at once. People ask us that too, why can't we reduce the amount of the bond? It comes every year, that debt service aid over the life of the bond, and then that money has to be returned, debt service, to the taxpayer. People ask us, well, are you just gonna get that money and spend it? It does not come back to the district budget. That is not money to us. That is money that goes back. The only way you can use that money differently is if the taxpayers vote again, or if there was something that had to be cut from the budget early on, you can reappropriate it, but it has to be specifically in these plans. It can't be anything new or different. And again, it doesn't come back to the district budget. So the tax impact for question one, and we say on the average assessed home, we're gonna show you a chart with a whole range of homes, but that's about $331. Again, more misconceptions about that. It's just like your mortgage. It doesn't add up. $331 this year, $662 next year. It doesn't work that way. It's the same amount of money all the way through. And as debt comes off, right? People keep saying, well, you borrowed other money, there's other money borrowed. As that debt comes off, then that is lowered, right? Our bond counsel has done a good job of taking all of the debt and looking at the whole 25 years, so your taxes aren't gonna go up and down, up and down, up and down. It is consistent, all right? But it doesn't compound. That is a social media misconception. It is the same amount.
What does this mean? Can you explain? If I'm paying 300 this year, 300 next year,
So-
300 the following year.
So think about your mortgage,
Yeah,
right?
I know, but
When you
how to do
closed,
this
when
one.
you closed on your house, your mortgage payment, I'll just use $1,000 because it's easy. With $1,000 and whatever your escrow and whatever. So now I have $1,000. Your taxes go up $300. Now you pay $1,300. You don't pay then the next year $1,600 and the next year
Obviously,
$1,900.
but over the years, this 300 adds every year, even if you keep it consistent, which you cannot.
That is
because
not, but that's not
But
correct.
that's not correct.
That's incorrect.
It's one-time payment.
It is not a one-time payment. It is a step in, it is a step
One
in.
every year.
But it's a step in to your tax
Yes. no,
number
but
now.
you can
It's like a
understand
car
how that
payment.
works.
Okay, so, but your explanation to us is incorrect. It stays at, it's a $300
Yes.
increase, that money steps into that tax. It stays there for 25 years, and then once the debt is relieved, that $300 comes off.
So what is the total for the 25 years?
You
probably
take
calculate-
your assessment,
Yes.
right, whatever that increase is, and you multiply it by 25, and that's going to be
So-
the household impact over the
So
25.
if you look at this chart, and again, you have to find your own home assessed value, right? For proposal one, this tells you what that addition is each year, right? So if your home is a $150,000 home, the impact is $156, all right? That continues. Remember though, as other debt comes off, that's relieved. As debt service aid comes in, so it's not, you can't just take $156 and then again, double it every year for 25 years.
Debt service aid reduces that?
Debt service aid reduces your overall,
Your
it's
tax
not
bill?
this
It
dollar.
reduces your tax bill?
Yes.
Yeah, so the debt service aid is actually, that $8.3 million works out to, I think it's $331,000 a year, $330,000
When
a
did
year.
it happen during the last 10 years, our tax bill to be reduced here in the city? And come on,
So-
I mean,
Well,
if
then-
you look at
so
our
what-
tax
sir-
bill.
And I'm gonna handle this question.
All right.
The tax situation that we're having here in the town, I understand, right? I'm a resident here, I own a home on Bloomfield Avenue, and I am not, and have not been allowed to not see the increases in my tax bill. I get that and I understand that. There's a lot of pieces that come together that cause those taxes to rise, and there's a lot of challenges that the community faces every year, okay?
And this is
Not-
just an added.
That's
onto
fine,
it.
but as a community member, right, we all have an opportunity on November 6th to
Yes.
go and vote
Right.
on what we believe is going to add the most value to the community, not just for today, not just for a year, but over the long-term aspects of the community for sustainability. You may not believe that this is the appropriate thing, and that's okay, because we all have that opportunity. I cannot be in a position in the role that I'm in and be able to give you answers for every reason why the taxes in this community go up, because it's municipal, it's county, it's, it's what we need to do here as the Board of Education, so there's a lot of pieces that come together. I understand that, but we also, we are tasked with a job here as a Board of Education, and that is we need to make recommendations to the community when we realize that there's a problem that needs to be solved. We have to hire professionals, we have to do the data, we have to do the research, and we have to come up with a solution. That's what our responsibility is, and once we provide that solution, we put it out to the community to make a decision as to whether or not we're gonna move forward with this plan for long-term sustainability and the best outcomes of our students and our children in the community. That's our role. So I understand that there's some challenges with that for each and every one of us of how it financially impacts all of us. But that's a decision that you personally have to make, and to have a debate about taxes going up and where it's all happening, it's a conversation worthy of having. I just don't know if talking about what we need to do from an educational standpoint in a group setting like this, I don't think we make progress in having this conversation about what we need here.
And I was gonna say, you and I had this conversation, not you and I, sorry, the lady behind you, had this conversation at the Historical Society just the other night at the museum. The school portion of taxes is 48%. The other 52% is your township and county. We have no impact on that. We're completely separate budgets. Every board member, all of the community members.
Very clear. on
But I was
that.
just gonna say, but everybody that's in here needs to know that the school board budget, that 48% only goes up 2%. So when we're talking about, again, teacher salaries, other kinds of things, those have no impact on the referendum. And I think that's what Danny's saying. We're here to talk about specifically this referendum project, and perhaps there's another time to talk about that other 52%. But we know, look, as Danny said, everybody pays taxes in the community where they live. Those taxes cover services. This is not part of that, right? So that needs to be understood.
Can I say something? You people are trying to make it sound like it's not gonna be that much money. But in reality, it is going to be an increase for all the people that are against it. You're
So,
trying
it's
to
for
say.
everybody, not for or
Right.
against, it's for everybody.
You're trying to say that, it's only gonna be $331. It's only gonna be $1 a day. Actually, it's really not gonna be just that. It's gonna be more than that. So you can't make it sound like
This portion.
it's not.
This portion
right.
is $1 a day, and that's
Right.
all we're talking about. So we people are not trying to make it seem differently. We are telling you, and we're here, as Danny said, to only talk about this portion. I have no control over that
And I
other
don't
52%.
think, and again, that chart, the chart that we showed, is certainly, yeah, go back to that chart for a quick second. We have to have a conversation point that is relevant for everyone. And the same way that your tax bill, where the assessments are done, they start off with what they consider to be that average assessed home. So that's our starting point, but you can see here that we're not denying anyone the reality that if your assessment is higher or lower, that your tax rate is going to be different for this particular bond. So again, for you, I don't know where your assessment falls, if it falls above or below that number, but yes, you would be paying more or less for this particular debt service to solve that problem.
And now in 2021, there's gonna be a reassessment.
There will
So-
always be reassessments, and I will tell you, and I spoke to that at the town hall as well. And again, I will say that Commissioner
Yeah.
Evans is much more eloquent at explaining it, but right now, based on the total assessment, we're about at 85% of fair market value. From what I've read and the conversations that I've had with Commissioner Evans, there may be an opportunity where there may be an adjustment or a shift in how the taxes are paid. So some people may see an increase, some people will remain the same, and some people will go down based on the way that the assessment
This is
works.
a classical story, so we have to have it.
What happened to the tax of froze?
senior citizen program. You still gonna get an increase? And-
So, I was told, and you can, I think you may have gotten this information as well, okay, maybe it was, the Nutley Say Yes group. But I did, and I can confirm with Commissioner Evans, but I was under the impression that if you have a tax freeze, that this will not impact, or have an additional increase in your taxes. So if you're frozen at 10,000, that this will not increase your tax, it will remain the
Get
same.
that from the state.
Correct, that you will not have an impact on that. And I can confirm that, and if you'd like, you can leave me your information, I'll get back to you on that.
So let's go back to your proposal for bond, and something which you probably can clarify for me. In this proposal here for the direction, you like for the first proposal, you ask 56 million.
Yeah.
And
We're
then
just about to
in the next paragraph, you say, no, in the next paragraph, you see the final eligible cost is 20 million. Can you explain to
Yes.
me?
Yeah, is the eligible cost on there in one of the slides?
Well,
This
before
here,
you go
the
to the
debt
next
service
piece,
is-
can you explain that debt service piece one more time for me?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure I understand the whole thing. Is it an additive to the 56, or is it
No,
something we
so-
get back?
Subtracted,
Yeah,
comes
so-
back.
So we get the 8 point, whatever million from the state back, but not in one shot. As you're
Correct.
saying, it's through
Over the life of the bond,
life of the bonds.
correct.
But
So-
that does not reduce the amount that each one
Yes,
of
it
those
does.
still
Yes,
has
it
to
does.
pay.
Yes, it does.
It does?
That's what
It
debt
does.
service is.
So the debt service, you
Yeah,
take
I
that,
need to understand.
yeah, that's
Sorry.
fine. So the debt service is not payable to us as a lump sum from the state. What the state says is that once you go in and have one of these projects approved and the community says, yes, let's move forward, what happens at that time is the state says, okay, based on the eligible number, which we'll talk about, that eligible cost, we're gonna give you a percentage of that eligible cost, which worked out to be $8.3 million. That $8.3 million is what we would be receiving over 25 years, broken out into 25 equal payments. So if you divide 8.3 million by 25, that number, which is about $330,000 a year, comes back to us from the state of New Jersey to offset the debt that we're paying back every year to satisfy the loan.
So that money from the state helps, so doesn't matter which part, the principal we're borrowing or
Correct.
the interest that's in it, it's
Correct.
just like one
It's
lump
a,
sum every-
correct, and it's
every
not
year.
applied to any one of those pieces, it's
Right.
just money that comes in. So what bond counsel does and what the financial advisor does when they figure out the bonding number, they take into consideration what the state has come back to us and told us what our debt service aid would be, and they adjust their numbers for bonding based on those numbers. So they are impacted already in what if the state didn't give us any aid, that number on the assessment would be higher.
And then there's
But is
a,
that-
oh, sorry.
No,
No, you're good. I just, we
Does that
have
mean
minutes.
that- does that mean that-
Hold on.
Does that mean that my, like, let's say my bill was gonna be 331 this, in a particular year?
Yeah.
Once that number is settled upon, the next year it might be lower?
No, because that's already
You've
included.
already factored
They've
it
already
into the
factored,
price.
financial advisor has already factored that in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly the question.
So the amount, the $331 or whatever the amount is the same. It never, it's not gonna change for any of us. That's the amount unless our assessment changes, our home assessment. In other words, the money that you're getting back is not reducing our $331.
No, it's already been incorporated into that.
Okay, so that's a set amount.
But you have to remember, you have the other bonds that come off. You have 3 other bonds. You have,
20, I think it's
2020
2029,
No, 2023 is the
23,
first
29,
one.
34.
29 and 32, so that's the other reduction.
Let's-
Because
let's
that's
not-
gone.
let's not
After
talk
that's
about it.
paid, it's gone. So
That's
that's,
unrelated, absolutely unrelated to this particular bond and what we're discussing here.
Well,
We're
that's-
talking that for this project, this is the payment.
that's correct. But again, this is about our 60th presentation, so that question comes up every time, so I just automatically answer
Okay.
it. So we've
one
gotten
question.
through,
Before
sorry,
you move
still
from
on
this-
question
yes,
1?
Before you move, you said that there is different percentage that the state is going to contribute if it's a new construction and if it's a rehabilitation. Can you tell us what is the difference in these percentages?
Yep,
Which
so
one-
I'm gonna introduce you to
And-
Joe
and
DeCaro,
welcome,
he is
Joe
our
DeCaro.
architect. The debt service number doesn't change, but it's interesting to hear the
But
difference.
is that information in the presentation?
Is what
The
information?
one that you're about to go into? Because I'd really like to see the whole presentation.
We're trying.
I'm asking, maybe some of this discussion could wait until we see
We
your
tried,
presentation.
yes. So go ahead, Joe,
I think
just
some of
answer
the-
that question.
I'll go through that.
Okay.
There's 2 components in the project. There's renovation to existing, and then there's new construction. What the state does, it looks at the population projections that the district had to do, and then they will look at what they call unhoused students. It doesn't mean that you have children in the street with no place to go, but it's the difference, the delta between what the capacity of the school is versus your projections. And that difference is a number of students that have to be housed. So we do a plan that meets those requirements. We go to the state in the application, and they say, everything that you're doing is eligible, 100%, or 50% is eligible. In this particular case, all of the additions for the classrooms are eligible. So it's totally reviewed by the state, and then what the formula is, they will give you 40% of the cost that they establish, which they say is gonna cost $150 a square foot to build. You can't build for $150 a square foot. The actual construction cost, we established, the ratio of that, you get approximately an overall of 20% for that construction cost. On the renovation side, which there are a lot of renovations that we're doing within the buildings, they will give you a full 40% of that renovation. So if you're putting in new windows, you're renovating interior spaces, fire alarm systems, all those things, you will get, whatever that number is, you will get a full 40%. So as Dr. Glazer mentioned, on the first question, you're getting over $8 million of state aid that they're going to give you. So that's the breakdown.
Okay.
It's a complicated formula. I tried to kind of keep it as simple
it's very
as
clear.
possible.
If it's a new construction,
It's some number.
based on their estimated cost.
Right,
If
and
it's
they give you
renovation,
40%.
it's
The other
the
one
total
is
cost.
based on our estimate at
And also, I know a couple people, there's handouts that have some of these frequently asked questions. If you didn't grab one of those, maybe it'll help you with that too.
I don't understand if that $8 million is guaranteed for the life of the bond, because administration changes, budget gets cut, will that ever come to impact that $8 million we said we would get?
The expected outcome is that yes, that would be payments that would be made every year. I don't know if administration would change those things, right? The hopeful outcome is that it remains exactly the way that they tell us it's going to be for the life of those 25 years. So that, and again, I guess that could happen, right? I mean, if the state ran into a problem where there was no money anywhere, that could be an issue. But again, they do it with the intention that what they provide is going to be sustainable for the life of that.
So, another, so these problems obviously with overcrowding the schools accumulate over the years. And now you want to basically solve them in one shot. It's basically taking lots of money, huge bonds, and solve it. Why don't you try to solve it step by step? Incrementally. What's the problem? What's the problem? Let's say to solve first the middle school thing, then to us, because here again in the referendum there is one sentence, the last sentence, where you say, Board of Education is authorized to transfer funds between the projects, and we don't have any control over this. So you now will transfer money,
Okay, so-
depending, and we know how the renovation goes. You will find lots of things in these old schools which you did not project.
But that's correct.
And it will become much more
These are-
expensive.
Correct. So these are all great points. So we're going to talk about what we've done.
Excellent. But can you answer the eligible cost first, the question that?
Why we're doing the project the way that we.
No. There are the difference between the total bond and the eligible cost, which is listed here, which is about 1/5 of the total
Okay.
bond.
So I thought you explained the eligible cost. Okay.
Is this the
Yes,
connected
that's
to the
what he
eligibility?
explained.
Correct. So his explanation, I'm going to say his explanation is not every dollar that we do as part of this referendum is going to be eligible for the state to give us
It's
debt
based on
service
this,
aid.
so most of it is actually new
So,
construction based on.
So the second question, which is why are we not doing one portion of this and why we're putting this all together into one project, okay? If you look at the cost to do the middle school, and we're just gonna use that as an example, I believe it's 40 million.
Sounds.
Okay, so if we have to do one project, right, we don't solve other needs in the community. So if we build the middle school, we still have the issue of trailers, the safety concerns that we have at the elementaries. Those trailers don't go away. okay? So our goal at this point was to try to bring everything together, phase it in over 2 years so that the tax impact is not immediate for the community. And the goal is to solve the problem. We've been dealing with an overcrowding issue in this community that dates back as far as probably the early 60s.
I'll give you a solution to solve the problem.
Sir,
and it's-
sir, could we please
Build a
go
new school,
for?
build a new school.
This is, so what I'm gonna tell you is, hold on, everyone just relax.
Let's hear the presentation.
Let's finish the presentation, and I will tell you, I can appreciate a good debate. I absolutely can, and we can have that conversation offline. I just don't think it's fair to everyone else that we're taking away from time that they're here to understand what is needed in our school district. And if you wanna have that conversation, by all means, we can leave after here, or we can sit down afterwards and have a conversation over coffee. But I just think it's unfair for everyone else that's here, that the time is being occupied to answer these questions. Thank you.
But these are some questions
I
that
understand that.
everybody needs to hear.
That's fine, and I have no issue with that, but
Some of
let's get through the
us are-
presentation.
Yeah.
Let's get through the presentation so that we can have that dialogue, okay? So you can
So,
continue.
I was gonna say, so you
for
heard,
that and more
Okay,
time for what-
please, let us get through the presentation.
Okay,
I
go.
really try my
Okay.
best to be patient.
Okay, go ahead.
so you got to hear why. Danny talked about why we split the question from last time. Hopefully this will come right back. Why we split the question from last time. The community expressed some of your same need to do the priority pieces. The priority instructional space is what is seen in question 1. Question 2, the second question, are the additional pieces that we need to solve the problem. Go ahead and,
You can continue.
you want me to stay
Yes.
up?
I'll jump in
So
on the
in
next slide.
proposal 2, so if you vote on proposal 1, if you vote affirmatively on proposal 1, that's your choice, you have the opportunity to do 2. And people said, well, wait a minute, why can't I vote no on both if I want to vote no on both? If you vote no, there's no reason for the other piece. This other piece is for the additional facility requirements that are needed to support the extra instructional space, right? So at Washington School, that would be a multi-purpose space. They use it for gym space. Currently, if you've heard our presentations before or seen any of the pictures, you know that at Washington School, the gym space is very small. Washington has not been built onto since 1927. You often have 3 classes of students in the same gym period. That might be 80 students. You cannot play basketball with 80 students. You can't do a lot of things with 80 students. So by adding on to the building, we add that multi-purpose space at Washington. Similar situation at Yannicka. Hasn't been built onto since 1929. Obviously, things have changed dramatically. At Yannicka School, the students eat in the cafeteria. There's so little space that they get 20 minutes a group. There's 3 lunches, 20 minutes a group, they cycle in and out. With this multi-purpose space, we're able to change that schedule and help children have a much more real lunch and recess schedule. Also at Yannicka, the extra things that come in, bathrooms for the renovated classroom, storage space, a wheelchair lift, all of those things are important. At Yannicka School, if you haven't been there, when you go in, there's a little stair step, and so this wheelchair lift brings everything up to the same level so that every child and every staff member, every visitor can access the building. Then at the high school in question 2, it gives us an opportunity, and when Joe goes through some of these designs, we can talk about that more. At the high school, how many of you went to Nutley High School? So you know where the Library and Media Center is? The Library and Media Center actually is a hallway that connects the old building to the annex. And so what they've done is they have 3 classrooms at this side where we put in a TV studio. You have bookcases over here. There's some tables where they made computer science. And if your class is in there, you have people walking in and out the entire time. So our goal is to be able to renovate that space into classroom space, collaborative instruction space, small group instruction space, to have the opportunity for more science, technology, and engineering classes that are not confined to tabletops and desktops, and to move the media center down to the first floor, move the TV studio down to the first floor. So that's what's included in proposal number 2. Again, you have the costs for proposal number 2. And for this one, the total bond amount, about $10 million. We do get the debt service aid from the state, this time obviously considerably less. It's all, based on their formula. And the tax impact for this second question is $63, again, based on your assessed value. So between the 2 projects, just to, kind of talk about your question a little bit, between the 2 projects, we're looking at a long-term issue. Our problem is not enrollment, right? The numbers of kids coming into the district is, the demographer has been looking at this 1995, 1998, 2001, 2006. We've known these children are coming. We have done a lot to make that happen. The problem is instructional space. We have no room, no classroom, no projection room, no closet left for a classroom to teach the children. And for an example, because a lot of you, and I'm thrilled to have you here, we haven't seen you at a town hall or some of our other meetings, so maybe you haven't gotten to see the pictures or taken a visit to one of the schools. Washington School is an example, one of the schools we're looking to add space to. We've recently turned the principal's office into a classroom. There are students studying in the projection room at the back of the auditorium. We have classrooms that are split into 4 with shower curtains so that we can have students who are in small group instruction also have instruction. If you are somebody that is getting speech or strategies or one of those classes, you're in a shared space because the amount of students in those programs is capped by the state. If you're a parent of one of those children, I hope that you would be advocating for something better for your child. There is no other room. We have classes on stairs, classes in closets, and that is happening throughout the district. That's why we need to build. Not so much the number of students, but what we call the shrinking schoolhouse. Because of special education and related services like speech, OT, PT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, English language learning instruction, for our students where English is not their first language, for our students that need gifted and talented instruction. Again, that's not even happening in the classroom right now. We do that on the stage. We shift those kids in and out with music lessons. For our students in kindergarten, in integrated preschool, which is a combined special ed and general ed program. All of these things take up space, and all of them have a limit to the number of students that can be in those classrooms, which means our general education classroom class size limits have continued to rise. The best practice number, as an example, for kindergarten is 18. We've raised to 22. The best practice for, say, a 6th grade would be 25. We're up to 30. And we are doing that because that's what we need to do. I have no more classrooms to break, that's what they call it, breaking the classrooms, breaking the sections, to make those classes smaller based on the mandates that we have. And that's what's driving what we need to do. The reason that we are looking for a final solution, if you will, and by final, we're talking a 15 to 20-year solution, right? A generation of students. That has not been done previously. This has been identified over and over again over a period of years. 1995, to your point, sir, with the first development, the demographer's report said, you are going to need to add space. You are going to need to add classrooms. 2001, 2006, we've known that this was coming all along. There have been referendums, as you know, and different proposals. There was one in 1968 for the high school. There was one in 2001. There was 2003 and 2006. And every single time, if you go back, I've Googled the press accounts, I've looked at the annual reports for the district to find out that history. Every single time people said, wow, that's a lot of money. Nutley can't do that. let's break the project down, let's do this little bit, let's do that little bit. And what's happened is the problem has never been solved. As I said, at Yanakaw and Washington schools, there has not been any additional instructional space since 1927 and 1929. At the high school, the last edition of instructional space was 1962, although there was additional renovations in that in the 70s with the science wing and that. And by we, I mean the community. And again, somebody will jump up and say, you don't live here. I still do live in New Jersey. I live in a community with schools and pay taxes. And I will tell you, I spend 20 hours a day here in Nutley. So it is my community as well. We have to address these for the long term. And again, that's why if you just do the middle school, as Danny said, you don't get rid of the trailers. You don't change the problem of instructional space at the elementary. You don't change the issues of security. You don't change the issues of 80 children in a PE class or children only having lunch for 20 minutes cycled in and out of the cafeteria. So I'm sorry, this keeps.
And the
fading
last
out.
referendum didn't help at the middle school, so this is probably gonna go down in history too, as just being a
I
Band-Aid.
can't answer about last middle school, and I don't know what you think the Band-Aid is, but quite frankly, the Band-Aids is the trailers. The trailers are not solving the problem. The trailers are a stopgap measure until the community makes a decision or doesn't. Maybe the decision is trailers.
I don't think it's just the trailers.
To be able to handle our instructional space needs. The issue is instructional space. There is no more classroom
And then
space.
10 years from now, when there's gonna be more children coming in,
So we can talk
that's
to you
not
about
gonna
that
be enough
again.
room.
So
There is, that's what the demographer's report does for us.
the demographer's report gave us an indication that we have about 500 kids that would be coming into the Nutley Public School District over the 5 years period that he did the last report, the update, which I believe was in 2016. And he identified about 500 students coming in. The prior demographer report that he did hit Washington's number by about 2 students. So I would assume that it's pretty accurate with the way that they've done there. And let me, if I can finish, I just want to make sure I get the point out. Knowing that those kids are coming in, this project actually creates more space than we need on the initial onset. Okay, so when someone says we're only planning for a year from now or 2 years from now, that's incorrect. There will be more space than we need once the project is complete. And the goal is that we have to be able to sustain the instructional needs that we're gonna see not just for the next 2 years, and that's why the project is as large as it is. We need to make sure that we can sustain the kids that we already identified in the democracy report, and make sure that we have the instructional space for that. The other thing that most people may not be under the understanding of is that we have best practice numbers that we set not only as a district, but we also have guidance from the state about how many children at each class level. And Dr. Glazer could speak a little bit more to this, of how many students we would like to have in that classroom environment, starting from pre-K straight to the high school level. Our goal right now is to bring those numbers back to what our own policy standards are, because we believe that that's where we're going to deliver the best instruction for our students with the best outcomes. And again, if the population numbers spike beyond what the demographer anticipated, okay, the next thing we would do is exactly what we're doing now, is we're going to continue to drive up enrollment again, but we are already beyond best practice. We need to get back to that. And we're making sure that based on the research that was provided to us from the professionals that we've hired to do this work and to give us the guidance that we needed, okay, that this is the overall best solution to solve the problem for the next 15 to 20 years.
And that's really important, that 15 to 20 years, because, you keep saying, what about, the development and what about the new? To be clear, in 1995, when they did the first demographer's report and told us how many students would be coming here, right, and when we would be expecting those students, and again, they were spot on. Originally, that impact in 1995, they didn't see that developmental impact. They've continued to develop since Hoffman LaRoche has left, family development that I know is a source of huge concern for everybody. And it does have an impact. It's one of the things that has an impact. But when people talk about Cambridge Heights or, this or that, you need to understand that growth that impact on the school district has happened since 1995. It's taken those 20 years for us to be here. So when we're offering you a 15 to 20-year solution, that is understanding that a vibrant community like Nutley, a vibrant community is going to continue to grow and build. And so our hoped for outcome is that we're preparing, we're as a community leaving a legacy for whoever is looking at this 20 years from now. That's the issue. 20 years ago, when the community was told, right, we're growing, we're developing. 8 years ago, when Hoffman LaRoche left and the community had to refill those ratables and come up to balance those taxes, the community was told, this is what's coming. This is what's coming. Unfortunately, I've joined you in the last couple of years. I have the unfortunate job of telling you, it's here. It's no longer coming. It's here. So, you know, this isn't new. This isn't something, this board's been looking at this. Joe, how long have you been? This isn't even 6 years, 7 years? This is not a new program. This isn't just something that we put out last year and this year. There have been 40 different options proposed, including looking at building a new school, including looking at repurposing existing space, commercial space, other space, secular space in Nutley. All of that has been looked at. So as we continue to talk about these projects, and we will try and tell you why this instead of that. How's that? Maybe that's the way to tackle this.
How do you keep going back to that slide?
I don't know. There's something. I'm going to tell you. There's
Every time it
something
opens up
weird
again, go back to
happening.
that slide.
So the toggle button isn't working. So I'm trying to use the, now even this isn't working. It was working.
I think one important thing to mention is we're talking about, 15 to 20 years, you're gonna be sitting here for another referendum. You are, right? Because if your town grows, this is what drives, continued investment will be required. But your property value will reflect that, and 3 other referendums, those bonds will be gone in 15 to 20 years. So yeah, you're gonna be up here paying again, but you'll be done paying for what you already voted in the first place.
I don't know.
And that's the evolution,
We're still
right?
paying
Continue
for the other
investment.
ones. We're still paying.
Exactly.
Okay,
We're
thank
still
you,
paying.
thank you so much.
We just disagreed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're in a different.
We're gonna continue
Yeah.
and we'll still
We
stay
have-
and
we have
have
one-
coffee and conversation.
We have one question over here.
And we also have a different board member who just came to me who wanted to jump in. This is Fred Scalera, board member who just joined.
Hey, Mike, how you guys know a lot in the room. So let me just say something. I came into high school, and I say I'm old, so I came into high school in 72. 1968, 69, they did a referendum for the new addition to the high school. That changed in 1970 when we moved out of using Vincent Church as classroom space and got that. A referendum was done. We've grown since. They did another referendum. That gentleman's right. In 10 to 15 years, you're going to be at another, I'm sorry, teacher? I'm sorry.
15 to 20 for
15
us.
to 20. But I'm just saying to you, you're going to be at that again because that's what happened when I was coming into school. And that was a referendum that was done back in 68 or 69 and was finished
Well,
in.
with 68 it failed, passed the second time,
That's
it's
correct,
69.
And then it was there. So I just want to level
And
set.
the problems that came along with all the referendums.
There was no problem with that. That worked until the growth in the town happened. I just want to bring a factor out that referendums and the growth because of our buildings and their age and the town and the demography changing and new things being built and homes being knocked down and 4 homes going up. And if you look at the size of the homes being built, they're 5 and 6 bedroom homes. That's not going to stop no matter what we want to say for the Board of Education. We have no control over that. So I just want to state that was one when I was a kid that benefited me, and other children coming in will benefit from this one. And
Thanks, Fred.
And in that time,
Wait,
your
wait,
property
you have a
value is
question.
probably tripping.
oh, for sure, that's true, sir. Yes.
So
Okay,
it all
let's
goes
take-
together.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
let's
Thank
take a
you.
question here.
I think,
Oh,
next time, glad you came.
How are you? Good to see you.
We have a question on this side of the
We
room.
have a question over here, please. Sir?
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 Sir,
We're having a question.
we have a question here.
Okay, sure, if you're going to have it later in the presentation, concurrent with the referendum, we're going to be having a board election, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I want to know, as a engineering program manager, I want to know who's going to be still on the board who can manage a $67 million.
So, I was gonna say, you guys are actually not allowed to answer, so the board members cannot have a conversation about the board, politics, any of those kinds of things during the election. You have candidates in this room, so they cannot, but I will tell you, again, I came in new just a couple years ago. When I was being hired, just so you know, I of course researched the district. I was able to meet with a number of community members before I accepted the position and learn a lot. And one of the things I learned was about the previous referendum and about, and I will use the word debacle that came from that. You had previous boards who did not, in my opinion, it's my opinion, do their due diligence in managing what needed to happen with those funds. We had lawsuits. The district was forced to spend more than $1 million to remediate that, and you had board members that came under ethics violations. I almost didn't take the job because of that. My job, I'm the only employee of the Board of Education. I don't know if you know that. I'm the only one that they have oversight over. So for me, having a group of people that understand their role and responsibility and oversight was critical for me accepting the position. Now, I'm gonna say the other piece with making the decision last year after I was hired to go with another referendum, the only way that would happen for me is with checks and balances. In this project, within this project, it's actually the next slide, these hard and soft costs, so we'll go through that a little bit. We'll have Mr. DeCaro from the architect firm talk about that. There is an outside construction manager that's hired. Think of our 3 branches of government with checks and balances. That independent construction manager has the oversight over the actual construction projects. If that person doesn't sign off that those projects were completed according to specifications and according to what we put in, those construction people may not be paid. There's a form that gets filled out after they do their work, goes to the architects, comes to the business administrator. You have 3 people in that process before it even goes to the Board of Education for public approval on a board agenda and a resolution to pay. That was never done previously. So you have that, and again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth with the next 2 slides with the actual costs involved and the lessons that were learned since that time. Because of that, as a voter, when you make your decisions, all right, on who's going to be on the board, who's not going to be on the board, whatever. Again, these people cannot speak to that. I hope that you went to one of the, either the Tap Into discussion or the League of Women Voters discussion. That's where those questions could be vetted, or you can go to any of the election sites, the public election sites, and ask those questions to the candidates themselves. I would tell you that while you're looking, however, look at the people that have made a difference, have come on since those problems. Look at what each person has to offer in that process and what they've contributed. And all of those candidate statements, again, are on the League of Women Voters site, on the Tap Into Nutley site, and on the individual candidate site. So that should help you as far as that part of the conversation. Let's go on to the hard and soft costs.
Do you want to take this one on, or do you want me to start it? Do you want to start it? Okay. So when we do construction projects, and this is right out of DeCaro's playbook, so he'll jump in on this. But the cost, the 70% of the cost of the projected, let's just use proposal 1. 70% of that cost is what we consider to be hard costs. Okay. If we knew exactly every surprise that would show up on the job, and we could eliminate all of those, we would be looking at about 70% of those costs of question 1 to solve our problems. We are required, okay, for 2 reasons. 1, the state requires us to do this, but number 2, to be responsible to ensure that we don't have to go back to the taxpayer for additional dollars, and to make sure that we can complete the build and the project that we're proposing. We have what we have known as soft costs, okay? Soft costs cover a couple of things. They cover the engineering, the architects, the surveyors, any permits, also construction management, which is what Dr. Glazer was just talking about, with that independent person that's part, or the independent company that's part of the team. And then also the big one, which is contingencies. The contingencies is what protects the community against the unforeseen risk in a project, in a construction project. So that 12% that's allocated in the project right now is to ensure that those surprises are going to be able to be financially handled based on the additional money that we've provided in the project that the state wants us to put in there, as well as us making sure that we're being responsible to the community when we're asking for this question and this financing to be able to solve the problems and the needs of the district, okay?
And I just, back to that checks and balances, I don't know where that gentleman went, but as part of those checks and balances, if there was a change order, if there was an unforeseen issue or problem, again, that gets brought to the committees of the board, the architects, the construction management, the business administrator. Together they work with the contractors, the projects, to make sure that they're negotiating the cost for that they're looking at the timeline, because often the timeline has an impact on what that cost is. And after all of that is done, then it comes to the board through committee. Then it comes to the public on a public agenda, and it comes to the board for a vote and a resolution. So again, a lot of checks and balances, even when there are unforeseen things, put into this process.
Did we miss anything?
Of the contingency, of these project costs, which are required to develop the plans. But one of the bigger numbers in that single number is the contingency. We strongly recommended that this project, because of the age of the buildings and complexity, that we have a 12% contingency. And that's to cover all what happens if you open up a wall in an old building, and the old drawings, if you have them, show pipes over there, but all of a sudden they're here. So you have to have that flexibility, because once you pass a referendum and you have a dollar amount, you cannot spend a penny more than that amount that was voted on. So you have that contingency. If that contingency is not used, and typically it's not all used, that goes back for tax relief. But it's in there. The other thing that we stress very strongly to this body is that we've been doing this a long time. We have a professional responsibility as an architect to advise and to protect the interests of the board when this is being built. In New Jersey, you cannot just select a contractor. And he may be the greatest contractor in the world, you can't select him. It has to go to public bid, qualified bidders, but you have to take the lowest bidder. If he's a penny less than someone else, you have to take him. So the district and us cannot, we don't know, you don't know who you're going to get. So we are there as the advisors and to protect the interests of the board. That contractor has to follow our plans and specifications. Our role is during construction, that's where it hits the ground. We are there on a continued basis, but not every day. We can provide services that we would have representation there every time a contractor is on site to watch what's being done. And we could do that. We strongly recommended against that they hire what's called a construction management firm. It's an independent organization that specializes in management of construction, and they specialize in schools. They are a third body that is hired not by us. They don't look at our interest. They're hired directly by the Board of Education.
Through a request for proposal,
Right.
just to be
They
clear.
don't select, like we were. We were not select, went through a process for selection. But then where they're doing our job, looking out for the board, you then have another agency that is doing similar things, but they are planted on site every time someone's swinging a hammer. They are reviewing, all the conditions. When something arises, they report it to us, and we work as a team collectively. Now, the benefit to the board is that no one is perfect in life. If we were the sole person out there looking at things, and there was an issue, we try to figure it out. But this independent person will look at an issue that comes up on a job, and they will evaluate the responsibility. So they're looking at us, they're looking at the contractor, we're looking at the contractor, So it's the benefit of the Board of Education to have these two entities working together but independent to really to protect the interest and the value of the project that's being built. And that has a certain cost to it, but all those elements have been incorporated in the overall.
So I have two questions. The first one with the contingency fee. So based on my understanding, you're saying there's a set percentage of this bond referendum that construction cost is allocated specifically for this contingency,
That's
right?
correct.
Correct.
So if for whatever reason you use it up, that contingency fee, then we run out of money for the project. What would happen?
Well, there's cases. You can't spend a penny more for a project that has been voted. If you voted for, it's $100, and it comes in at $101, you can't award the contract. You have to bring it down. During construction, right, there are things, now we believe that 12% normally is around 8 to 10 on new construction, because new construction you can control much better. But when you're touching, all right, we, in our experience, and it's based on professional experience and other things, we believe that 12% contingency is sufficient for projects of this nature. Right? There are elements and devices that you can use during construction to maintain that price.
So is there, just a question out there, is there some kind of insurance program that you can use that money, that contingency program, to buy an insurance that covers that kind of situation? Just a different way of using money.
No,
Okay.
No, I
I'm
was
not
gonna
aware of
say-
any insurance
yeah, I was gonna say-
policy.
Okay.
I've been doing this too long,
But-
that can say, I
but
want to
the
buy
other
it.
That's a good
But-
question.
Please
That's good.
remember, please remember the other
Yeah.
piece is, if that money is not used,
Right.
it's returned.
Okay.
Right, so unlike an insurance policy where you're paying and you never use it, you've still paid. In this case, we've budgeted, if we don't use it, it's returned.
It's a good thing that you're budgeting it. Anybody that does home renovation knows there's always.
Oh, there's always.
Yes.
Always, it's
Yes.
like 12% isn't that
Mhm.
much if you listen, percentage. The second question I have here is, in terms of the three parties that's going to be involved in construction of this, the contractors, the architect, and this independent manager,
Construction manager.
are all three of them hired by the Board of Ed?
Through the request for proposal process.
Yes.
So the architects have already been identified.
Right.
We did in November of 2016. We issued a request for proposals. We got a number of proposals that were reviewed by the board attorney, by outside expert. We invited in, I think, 7.
Yeah,
We
it was-
screened
yeah.
7 and invited 5 firms to give us proposals for these projects. From those proposals, the architect of record became DeCaro Rubino Architects, and they're on board. Until the referendum passes, and I always do remain optimistic, so don't take offense at that, anybody. We are not able to identify anybody else, right? We don't have the funds, we don't have that. So after it would pass, then we would do the request for proposal, right, for the individual pieces of the construction and to hire that independent construction manager.
Okay, so let me understand this. You say once this proposal gets approved,
Thank
then
you for
would,
honoring.
yes, and then you would go out and resubmit it, not for the architect.
They don't
already.
submit it, they submit to us.
Maybe I can,
Right.
once the referendum passes, then we finalize the drawings and specifications to go out to public bid. That takes a period of time.
Okay.
That process, go out to public bid with the board attorney, advertising, going through all the legal requirements. Then you have contractors bidding on the project. We then review the bids with the attorney for paperwork, all the qualifications, and then the Board of Education awards the contract to the responsible low bidder.
Lowest bidder.
That's your person who is then going to be with you for 1.5 to 2 years to build all of these facilities.
That's the contractor part.
That's the contractor.
Okay.
Before the bids for the contractor,
Yes, so.
once the referendum passes, then we would strongly suggest that they go out for the RFP process, the same process that we were hired to do that for the construction manager. That construction manager will be then hired right? Only after the referendum passes. And then they will work together with us too in doing valuations, another pair of eyes looking at documents, constructability, logistics. We have to build this first, we have to build that second, come back and finish, because all of these additions are going to be done during the school year. So with our experience, this is basically what we do. New schools in New Jersey. Safety is extremely important in how you build these buildings. And we put all those elements into the specifications. Contractor has to abide by that. So
If you look behind you, we just changed the slide, it has
Okay.
kind of the timeline for the project, so that might help too.
So we're all working parallel. Then, once the award, we have the CM, then it's awarded, and then you start the construction.
So, for your contract per se, you are really being hired through the proposal stage and has the option to continue once?
We're hired right now to assist in this part, to get the approvals from the State Department of Education.
Right.
And then up to the referendum. Once the referendum passes, our contract continues to develop the construction documents, all the engineering, structural, civil engineering, and to get it to your bid. We're also, as part of that contract, there during construction to observe construction, to make sure that they're building it per the plans and specifications.
Okay, and from your experience going through the RFP process, being selected, being the architect of this project, do you feel the oversight, the governance is sufficient, is robust, so that the contractors to be hired in the future, or the contract manager being hired in the future, will go through the similar robust process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we strongly, one is we've been doing this a long time. Every project you learn from. It's easy, and you want to keep the total dollar amount low for the referendum. You could cut numbers in soft costs and other things. We strongly suggest you cannot do that. You have to have, instead of 8% contingency for this job, you need 12%. Right? That's a big difference when you look at the number. It's required. We're not bashful. We're not here to win any popularity points. We're here to advise the district professionally, and we strongly suggest things. They make the final decision, but to their credit, they've agreed to a lot of the issues that we've brought up, evaluated, and made intelligent decisions based on information. We feel very strongly that based on our cost estimates, our budgets, the plans that we've done in this district, I've been working with this district for many, many years. We've done a lot of due diligence. When we've told the district that you have to pay a certain dollar amount to do soil testing prior to the referendum, just so we know what soils in this area, so we know, do we have piles, do we have regular, do we have rock? And we did that. Well, there's a cost to find that information. Nobody has a crystal ball. So we said, if you want to go in as our budget, not knowing if there's rock here, okay, but I told you. And if you hit rock, don't say anything. Or do I throw in a big number to assume maybe there's rock? So they've listened, and I can assure you that we've done a lot of due diligence to explore. Can you cover everything? No, but that's why you have the additional contingency. We feel comfortable in our budgets, and we feel comfortable in the elements that we've added into the overall.
And John, environmental also was done.
Yes, we've looked at those elements. We've had asbestos reviews, things where we're touching. We want to know what we're touching because that has an impact. And we also schedule the work.
So I'm gonna just keep going, because I can't believe that it's already as
Can I
long
just
as.
say one thing before we go?
Sure, Karen.
But, and I want to make sure I understand this too. It's not one company that we're looking at to do this construction, correct?
So that
It's
has
going to
not
be a
been-
different company for each.
That
No,
has
I
not
bid
been-
the project.
So the construction bids, the actual firms that would be constructing the physical space, we are not there yet, and that would be done on a bid process, and it would go to the lowest bidder. So it could be different contractors doing different pieces. It could be one contractor, if they bid on those pieces individually and happen to be the lowest bidder. The one piece that will be consistent alongside of the architect will be the construction management firm. That firm will be consistent and will be through that entire project along with the architect.
But it could be just one company, say, doing the middle school, another company doing Washington School, a third company
Depending on who the
doing.
responsible
Well,
lowest
no.
bidder.
It can be. Years ago, they required that every trade be bid separately, plumber, electric, and it's just a coordination nightmare. Now you can select an overall GC, which is much more
General
beneficial.
contractor.
All right.
Right.
Now,
And he
the
gets
question
his
is,
fee.
as we approach bidding time, we're getting feedback from a lot of different districts, our CMs. Depending on the climate, the economic climate, it may be beneficial to have one general contractor to do all the projects. Right? Now, we've also, you can have an option, and that has not been vetted yet. That will happen after. Because you can't do it now because you don't know the climate, the economic climate at the time. We can possibly bid it as contract A, B, C, D, all 4 schools, right, independent, and an overall that you have to do all of them. The problem with that is then you can't select. If the combination of the 4 independent is lower than the overall, you have to pick it. But those are options that we will look at, evaluate, and then we will make a firm recommendation, as will the construction manager. Is it better to have one guy to do everything, or 4 guys to do it?
Well, having been involved in school construction from my experience.
From your vantage point across the street?
From my personal experience in education and dealing with construction in a school district, I would have to say that one contractor would be much better than having 4 separate contractors. You will have better control over it, and you will be able to manage it 100% better. I know it from a management point, from a choice point.
But what I can
from
tell you is
being
that we definitely
involved.
have at least 4 board members here, so I know that they're all listening, so we will
Yeah.
definitely take that into consideration as we get further into
I
that process.
built-
I have 6 board
I
members.
built a
So this is
whole.
6 of
okay.
9.
I
And
put
they're all
together-
separated, right?
I put together a whole technology program for my school district, and I was involved in the construction from step 1 all the way through to the end, almost putting on my hard hat and going in with the people, and I
Oh,
can
you're all
tell
getting
you-
hard hats, by the way.
I was gonna say, and can I just say, I don't, again, don't recognize a lot of faces. You have been here for every
Yes, I
single
have.
meeting for
Because
2
we're
years.
across
First
the street
referendum
from
and
the
second,
Unicor
but not
School.
just because of that. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for always staying engaged, for making sure that you tell us what you're thinking. You know, it does have an
We're
impact.
very
Those first
concerned.
plans last fall looked very different than what we see now. That community input has been heard, and it's really important to us. It's 11:15, so I want to keep going. Joe, I'm going to ask you to come on this side. This is the slide where we talk about what we're getting. The first board is Ennicott School. This is Washington School. Right behind Danny, you see the middle school, and on the end is the high school. So we're just going to work our way through of what we're getting. This slide is overall, right? The secure entrances are at the middle school and Ennicott School. Obviously, we get rid of the trailers. At Ennicott and Washington School, we don't have a need to add additional trailers. 37 classrooms is total, and again, when we go through this, you'll see where those are. The additional learning spaces, collaborative learning spaces, small instructional spaces, spaces to be able to do what's being called now maker, but it's really more open spaces to do that kind of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math work. The bathrooms, again, Joe will talk about that when he goes through the boards, why we have single and groups. Elevators, the elevators are critical, especially at the schools where we need to do the ADA requirements, the multi-purpose spaces I've already talked about, having the true 6, 7, 8 middle school model. We can continue to talk about that. I believe we have information on the website and other articles. If that's something that you have a question about, I'm happy to also talk to you about that. We feel very, very strongly. You're hearing a lot about construction. I hope somebody comes and talks to me about education. Anybody, any of you can talk to me anytime. Education, this middle school piece really ups our ante as far as rigor for students, highly qualified students. When the last referendum did not pass, we implemented a pilot model to be able to offer this in the 6th grades. We feel that strongly about it. It is a pilot. It doesn't include everything that you would have housing 6, 7, and 8 together. So that piece is critical to this. The middle school cafeteria and changing rooms for the gym, because we're adding more than 300 students to that space. Obviously, space relief in every elementary school. People say to me all the time, you keep talking about Yannicka and Washington, what's Spring Garden getting? You know what Spring Garden's getting? Right now, they are continuing to get all of my overflow kindergarten. I had 14 kids on a waiting list at Yannicka, Radcliffe closed, Washington with only one more space. They're all going to Spring Garden. I had to collapse 5th grade last year at Spring Garden to add, it was the old last instructional space I had for kindergarten at Spring Garden. They have almost 20 families with children that do not live in the Spring Garden district. When those classrooms are freed up for 6th grade for special education, that gives relief. When we have these extra classrooms where children can go to school in the district where their parents bought their home, that gives classroom relief. That's true at Lincoln, that's true at Radcliffe. And Radcliffe has a really big impact right now. Almost every single grade level at Radcliffe is closed. As people are moving in, I'm the one that has to take the calls at the closing where they're screaming and crying and the realtors are saying, I know, we looked at the website, we saw, really there's not one more, you can't take one more, and I can't. So that is how it affects everybody. That obviously the enhanced people with disabilities availability and accessibility from the changes that we're making. And if question 2 passes, that state-of-the-art media center at the high school. We are committed, I think everybody is committed to college and career readiness for our students. That media center provides an opportunity to do more college and career readiness. We have a number of students who are excited and willing and looking forward to college. We probably have an equal number of students who are really looking to go into careers and trades. Having a state-of-the-art facility, we have the culinary program, the TV program. This allows us to offer those experiential job-related opportunities. So yeah, walk away from it from 1 second and disappear.
That's set on a timer.
Is it? Is that what it is?
You're rolling.
So I thought it was a motion. I thought it was a motion sensor myself. So anyway, Joe, if you would just go through
Real quick, I
the.
just want to, I'm not going to repeat all the program.
No, but just go through the, excuse me, Joe's trying to go through the space of the.
In Yantico is a 3-story building, it's long. So if we look at the 2 sides, as you're looking at the front of the building, to the left is a 3-story addition, that would be question 1. In that addition, we're adding classrooms. The main entrance at grade will be the security entrance with new administration in that location. Then you have the transition, because this is multiple levels, each of the school is all different. So we're accommodating the Americans with Disability Act, so you have free access for disabled children, visitors, and staff. So you have the security entrance with 2 classrooms. Each classroom in this addition will have its own individual toilet for the grade level, appropriate grade level. And then also it's more economical to do that than to build another big toilet within the existing building. So all of the construction is in the new. The 2nd floor will be 2 additional classrooms. The elevator will be placed there. And then on the 3rd floor, you have 3 classrooms and a small group instruction learning environment. So that would be done. Very clean addition off to that side where the parking, where the pavement area is there. On the right side, which would be question 2, but if both questions pass, what we're envisioning in the construction sequence is that you build this portion first. That will allow the students that are in the existing trailers along this side of the building then to get moved into here. Then we can then relocate, move, throw away, sell, whatever, those trailers, and then build the multi-purpose room and renovated area here for classroom space. This would have its own separate entrance, all right, but it's still connected, because right now the trailers, you have to go outside, go inside, that's a security issue. In this location, we have a separate toilet that would serve the multi-purpose room. So theoretically, you could close this off and just use this facility for different purposes without opening up the remaining portion of the school. We also designed this as its own mechanical system, have a rooftop unit, so basically you can turn this on, turn it off, efficient in terms of operating cost, and any combination of things that the district wants to use the facility. Okay?
How many sixth grades in that school?
What is the population?
So
How many
with
sixth
the
how many
sixth
classes?
grade,
Oh.
so with the sixth grade pilot, it
Okay.
doesn't work like sections anymore. You have a number of students that would fill 3 sections at Yanakaw, 4 at Washington, 2 at Spring Garden, 3 at Radcliffe, 4 at Lincoln. But with the model, because you have highly qualified teachers teaching the core subjects, right? Math, science, social studies, they're switching classes. So you're moving those students through. So at Spring Garden, you have 28 children, 28 and 27, moving through together. It's a lot of kids.
Ask a question?
Sure.
I assume this work is being done keeping in mind the architecture of the building. We have beautiful buildings
Yes.
in Nutley, and I'm
Yes.
assuming that everything is going to match.
Yes.
So that it will have,
Yeah.
you know,
It
a very
would,
So-
it would be
appealing look.
designed in the same vernacular that's there, the brickwork, the cornice work, things like that.
So that comes up a lot. I don't want to detract from what you're about to say in Washington also, but that comes up often. One of the things we have heard from the community consistently, and I mean, not since I've been here, since the board and the architects have been vetting this over 6 years, we love our buildings, right? Washington didn't change since 1927. We didn't want to change that front. When we started building that secure entrance, you would have thought that we said that we were gonna, I don't know, put a trailer on the front of Washington School. The outcry for keeping the schools to look like the historical Nutley schools has been huge. So one of the things that has been done, if you've seen the secure entrance at Washington, it looks exactly the same. They did a really nice job. As they're doing the Washington Yanakaw, the addition to the middle school, it would look similar, right, to what we have. It's 100 years old. It can't be exact, but we follow the same style.
Would it be energy efficient?
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
Oh,
consider
yeah.
that?
The leak.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
material, the insulation, and the mechanical systems are all highly efficient.
Probably cheaper to build a new school.
Yeah, that's what we all say.
Because we've been talking about that in this town for, I believe, 25 years. So hold that question, and we're gonna come back to what we
They-
vetted and why we are still proposing.
They
this.
should have bought the school on,
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
yeah, yeah, and they
So
didn't.
let's
They
keep
didn't.
looking at this,
So
and we'll come back to
Moving on
it.
to Washington.
That would have been the answer to
It
the,
would have been, but
right.
they didn't, so we have to keep going.
At Washington, this is what we call the rear of the building. This is the existing multipurpose room on the lower level. What we're doing is we're adding a 3-story to match the existing height of the building that goes off the field in the back here. We're adding 2 classrooms per level as question 1. So we're extending the corridor out, a new stair tower, toilets, and then 2 classrooms, and they repeat. And you can see the floor plans are identical. So that's very efficient in terms of construction. You're just duplicating the same elements. Question 1. Question 2, if it passes, this is where those classrooms are on this level. We would then add a new multi-purpose room with a storage area, food service, and multi-purpose room that would be adjacent to the existing auditorium. So this would go in where there's the trailer in the back here now, that would be located here, and then there's another trailer in this location, and those would be removed. So that's the addition. 3 stories there and a multi-purpose room. The middle school is the largest addition and renovation. This is this is the front of the building. This would be the side of the left side as you're looking at the main entrance. The township acquired additional property along this strip, which allowed us to put this addition here. Over the various years I've been involved, and I think Dr. Glazer mentioned we did approximately 40 different options. We even included, we didn't leave any rock unturned where we could add additions. In the courtyard, the parking, we even looked at adding to the front. we didn't think that was viable, but we looked at it. It's an option. Then it was evaluated. But with the additional property along the side, and we always said, you know, if you had just a little bit more room here, you could build an extremely efficient structure on the side to house the classrooms that are required based on the projections. Christmas came early, and the town actually provided that. We were then able to put a very clean addition, and basically if we look at, we have let's go to the first floor. This would be a new entrance. Your other entrances along here when you come up the stairs. This would be your new security entrance. It would be adjacent to the existing office, the administration. We would renovate that and switch certain things around in that to make this the access area where visitors would come into a vestibule, come into a holding area where you have the main office, then they would be allowed into the building, or people would come in to escort them to wherever they're going in the facility. Then you have the corridor where then, because of the bringing in all of the 6th grade to this facility, you also need to upgrade your core elements. Your core elements are your gym and your cafeteria. You can't physically, unless you're going to eat in the classroom, you can't physically house the students in the existing cafeteria. It's just, unless you're going to start at 9 o'clock in the morning for lunch and finish at 2:30. So we had to add a multi-purpose cafeteria area. So as you come in, this is your space. Then on these, and then you have your expanded kitchen area, and then along the driveway that we have on the side, we have the receiving and the mechanical rooms, and that's going in the hill. As you remember, as you approach from the road, this alley or street comes up. So you're actually coming up to the 2nd level in the back where you have your entrance to your gym. So all of the mechanical space is in the hill, okay? So now when you go to the 2nd floor, and then below that you have, because you're very low here, you have additional classrooms on that lower level. When you go to the 2nd level above, you have classrooms, and then you're at grade in the back. You have a 2nd entrance, which is what you have now. You have your new multi-purpose room, gym, and that's adjacent to the other gym. So at night, you can come in, access this, similar to what we did at Anticar. You don't have to have access to the entire space. You can kind of close this off and use this. We reorientated the toilets that exist there, reusing it. And then we have all your egress, your stairs, and your classrooms, your science labs. And then on the 3rd floor, you have, again, a repeat of these floors with the upper portion of the gym. This is not a floor, this is just a higher space with the classrooms along here and the lobby. As you can see, there's a simplicity in the plan and a very clean line where this is the existing building. We're actually building this a few feet away from the existing walls, because if you go along that alleyway, the building goes in and out, in and out. If we try to bring that against that building and trying to build that, you just throw money in there. What we felt is based on our experience, you separate the building, you build it, it's clean, that building will go up, you'll see it happen during the year, but you're not touching. And then you just kind of clean it out and put a roof over it, and you're done.
And that is all new construction. So it's not a new school, but it's all new construction separate on that space that was what's known in
And
the
then you
town
have
as the
some
Davis
other
Project.
renovation and tie-ins to the building mechanically, things like that.
What happens to the Board of Ed space? Is that still in there, or do they move?
Board of Education spaces.
We're still in the basement.
Still in
For
the
all of you, I welcome all of you come visit me. My
She's
office,
old.
well, it's not just that. I don't think people know that it's the old, like locker room, boiler room.
It's the boiler.
It was the boiler room. I have no windows. The conference room has no windows. You come down like crazy ways to access it. There is space, but not enough to run. People are like, oh, put it in the board office. If I could get 3 classrooms out of that space, it would be a lot.
We did evaluate
In
that.
this plan, you say.
In this plan, we stay. And we looked at, see, I think that's what people don't know as part of the options. We've looked at spaces to move the board office. We've looked, all over, even since I've been here. We've looked at, we worked with the developer who purchased Roche to see what was available there. All that was available there was a place for us to park all of our buses, and before we were even able to get through the zoning process to move the buses, they decided to do something different with that space. We've looked at the Ciccolini property. The Ciccolini property, so you know, is a tear down. It is not something that can be renovated. We considered it for early childhood. It's not big enough. We looked at it as 6th grade, but then that takes away from our 6th grade model. That's no different than keeping them in an elementary school. And again, not enough space for 300 students. It seems like it would be, but you'd have to look at the configuration of that property and where it exists. When the Valley National Bank was looking to be developed, we actually gave an impact study to the Planning and Zoning Board of why that would be a negative impact for the district to use that as a multi-developed space. And then when it fell apart, we, Danny, myself, the business administrator said, okay, maybe we could take all those preschools out of Spring Garden, take all those kindergartens, make an early childhood center, and free up space that way. We did go and tour that space. Unfortunately, Valley National Bank, well, not unfortunately, because they're a strong business holder in town. We don't want to lose them, but they were staying, and they needed to keep their drive-through. So I couldn't really put kids. I couldn't really put kids in that space.
Send
him in the tube.
That would be fun. No, let's do that. I didn't think of that. But because of that, there wasn't enough space. There wasn't enough space for even enough classrooms for the 7 classrooms we needed just for pre-K. So we had to abandon that thought as well. We have looked at every available space. I know that there is, you know, we have these meetings. People stand up and say, you didn't meet with the commissioners, you didn't meet with the Planning and Zoning Board, you didn't look at any of these spaces. We have. And just because we don't, you know, stand up at a meeting and say, hey, met with the commissioners today, or hey, had a meeting with this individual or that individual, or toured this building or looked at that building, doesn't mean it didn't happen. We really, and again, not me necessarily, it's been going on for 6-7 years. This work has been done, not just due diligence, I want to say done to death, but that doesn't seem very nice.
I have a quick question.
Is it about the middle school before we go to high school?
Yeah, it's about the middle school. The last referendum, they built a new cafeteria at the middle school.
Correct.
So how come?
Because we're adding 350 more students, so we don't want to have the same issues with lunch that we have at the other buildings. As Joe said, you'd be serving lunch starting at 9:30 in the morning all day to get all the kids in. You need that additional space for additional students. And that's the other thing, sir, with the new building. You know, even when we were looking at Valley National Bank or Ciccolini or any of the other spaces, we really vetted this out. I think that even myself didn't recognize what those other operational costs are, right? You need a full other teaching staff, administrative staff, furniture, all of that stuff that we're bringing with us when we come, that we don't have as an added expense. Because none of those expenses are part of a referendum, and they're certainly not part of the district budget. So that's just another piece of that.
Middle school question?
Sure.
Do I need to correct it?
Sorry?
That's high
Hold
school.
it up.
That's high school. This is high school. That's,
Okay, maximum flow analysis, especially the stairways in conjunction with your model.
Great, yeah, great question. One of the things, if you look at the existing high school, this is going to be really a 6th grade, this is going to be really a 6th grade wing, so they're pretty much contained in that area. So the flow is going this way. They're going to, these children are going to use this facility and this facility. The remaining portion of the middle school has its own circulation, but part of that, when we step back, we just don't look at the addition, we look at the entire school. If you look at the entire plan, and we didn't show that because the security issues and everything today, but if you're going to do a new school with the auditorium in the center, the gyms in the back, and the circulation around it with classrooms, that's pretty much the ideal way to facilitate a design for a school for proper flow and efficiency going through. The other thing we look at very carefully is the egress. And the state, there's building codes, there's Department of Community Affairs codes, but New Jersey schools have enhancements. So when you're designing a school, it's at a higher level of code elements than a regular building. For egress, there's lengths of travel, for example. If a student is in this corner, he can't exceed a certain length of travel to get to a protected stair tower. All those things have been incorporated, and that's one of the things that when we send it down to the State Department of Ed, prior to the referendum for approval, which the district has received, they look at all those elements and say, yes, this meets their requirements. The same thing for the core. Someone asked about why are you building these core spaces. The state will look at the population and the core spaces within the existing building, and they will say, you're short. You can't build this without doing those elements. So that's been vetted, and then they received approval for the referendum.
I have another quick question. If you let the middle school children are not allowed to go out to lunch, if you let them go out to lunch, you'll have enough room in the cafeteria. You
For
let the grammar
adolescents,
schools go
social,
out to
emotional,
lunch.
and that will probably not continue. For security, social, emotional development at the middle school, that's why they don't go out to lunch. There is a reason. It's not just a random reason that the middle school students don't go out to lunch. We can debate that separately, but you wouldn't have that space, because even at Yannicka and Washington, where currently students do go, I still have lunches of only 20 minutes and cycling through three sections of lunch. It's getting to be 20 to 12, and I know
Right.
people have questions. We want to honor your time, so let's look
What's
at.
left? I didn't want to put it upside
Are you
down.
upside down?
What's left? Okay, so the high school. Question one is a renovation. This is where your existing live media center is. What we're doing is we're renovating that and creating some new spaces. We're renovating the TV studio and developing a renovated area for the media center. The question two, if that's passed, what we're doing is we're taking the location of the media center and building a new facility out front, right in front of the auditorium, in between the entrance here and the curved portion of the building located here. So we're relocating the TV studio, control room, office, and media center, and then creating additional classroom space within the existing facility. So you're tight on space. In order to add classrooms, you pull something out and then recreate it. We evaluated whether you just put classroom additions on. But what we found is the location of the media center, the new technology was more efficient and economical to relocate that and then build much more classroom space within here. There's a circulation pattern. You have additional small group instructional spaces, because they're not just large spaces anymore. You have to teach children differently in different environments. So you have smaller spaces, pull-out areas. You have 4 new classrooms, and what Dr. Glazier mentioned before, a makerspace. It's a STEM lab element, the new theories of teaching, and with a small group opening up off of that. And those would all be in renovated spaces. So those are the 2 questions.
And I was going to say, so you can see we do have a lot of new construction. We do have a lot of brand new and the renovated. So even though we don't have a space big enough anywhere to build a full new, any one of these, you are getting new construction. And again, I'll go back, I know somebody said that building these new spaces is a Band-Aid. The new spaces aren't the Band-Aid. The trailers, I will say again, the trailers are the Band-Aid. So as we go through, we've already talked about this, I think, a little bit. I'll just honor the slide and keep moving. These are the past referendums. People always ask us. It was 2003, specific to interior things, the high school science wing, PA systems. In 2004, that was the referendum that I think you, ma'am, referenced for the middle school, the building addition. And then in 2006, there was portions of the high school, the elementary school, but all of that work was repairs, facade repairs, window replacements, roof. I think you know that at Yannicka there was a roof come down, HVAC replacement, restroom renovation. So again, we have not had at Yannicka and Washington School, in addition, of instructional space since 1927, 1929. It's become untenable. Again, I think we also talked about a lot of the lessons learned already. Again, this slideshow is on the district website. It's everywhere. You can see it. It does talk about the things that we've already mentioned today, the bids, the specifications, using the checks and balances of the project management, looking at the review processes for contingencies and change orders. We continue to talk about how funds are dispersed, talking about progress reports from the construction manager on an ongoing basis, progress reports from the architects, and again, all of those are public, right? All of those happen publicly at meetings and are published for the whole community. Now, there were two people that I think, there was the new construction question, unless we talked about that, and we had another question from you, sir, about the development and the different things that are impacting our need. Because remember, it's not the enrollment, not the number of kids, it's that shrinking classroom, it's that lack of instructional space. Dan, you want to hit the five things quickly? Quickly.
Okay, so, and if I miss any of the five, I should hit them all. But if
I
miss
think you'll
any,
get it. We'll shout out.
So, 2010, 2011, Nutley moved forward with all-day kindergarten, which was one of the first things that happened years ago that was great for educational purposes, but was one of the first steps in putting some of that strain on the buildings. After that, we introduced the Autism Program, which from a budgetary standpoint was never planned for. So we didn't reserve money, prior boards didn't reserve money to be able to make sure that we had the appropriate numbers inside of our budget to be able to sustain the growth that that program has taken. And that program is amazing. We do great services for our special needs students in the district. What was once planned as a revenue generation process within the district turned into a very large population of special needs students that we now have here as community members.
What Danny means by that is it was originally conceived that we would bring in tuition-paying students from other districts. We don't have the space to do that, so the program has never been able to generate revenue. It costs us a tremendous amount of money, and even though it's a fabulous program that we love, we wouldn't want to lose. It actually brings people to the community because they want their children to participate.
So the third reason is what Dr. Glazer was talking about, which is the shrinking school. All right, it's how we deliver instruction to students. The way that we delivered instruction 30 years ago, 40 years ago, is much different today. You can speak to some of the different programs that, and I know you spoke to them already, of the different types of programs that we're required to have that were not necessarily needed or required at that time 30 or 40 years ago. I know many of you have seen the development that goes on in town, okay? We've spoke and we've been very open with this discussion. Multifamily buildings that have been taking place, the development, they do have an impact. So that, that you won't find one board member here that would deny the fact that we are getting some students from multifamily development as well. But the other piece of this too is we are a generational town, and so we have families that go back 4 generations here. And so as one generation leaves, right, and their new generation takes over, they come with children. Nutley used to be a town where people did move in and then start their family. And what we're finding today is that they're moving in with the family. So they're coming in and they're prepared to start entering children into the district. They've done their research, they've made their decision that Nutley is going to be the place where they're going to raise their children. And so they're coming here when they're 4 years old or 5 years old, and in some cases they're coming with a sibling that's already in school somewhere.
We just had on Thursday, kindergarten and 5th grade come and register.
Yeah.
They're not, it's not like when I bought my house with my husband, where we started small and we figure, we're gonna establish ourselves and then have a kid, maybe build, grow into a different home. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
They start the apartment and then move to the single family home.
So, these are those 5 reasons. So it's not just one particular piece. We have a combination of wonderful things that are attractive to young families, to people that want to be here in this community. I think it's encouraging to know that we have such a wonderful park system. We have a really good educational system, which the things that we're proposing right now really brings us to another level to increase that rigor and, you know, and to really put an anchor in this community to build on. And we all can agree, I would think, if you've had children and raised them in this community, a school district is one of the most important pieces in a sustainable community. And, you know, as a board president with other board members here today, this is one of the things that we can't speak enough about. The things that we're proposing really keeps us moving in an upward direction. Everything that we've done up to this point with our strategic plans, with the implementation of new curriculum, all of those pieces that we've put together are moving our district in the direction that I want to believe the entire community wanted us to do. We're moving in that direction. And this is going to be the next piece. That's an outcome, right, of the hard work that all of us have done as a community to ask for progress in the school district. We implement the successes. They are taking off, and now this is the next piece. This is an outcome of that. So we have to come together. We have to make some tough decisions, but we have to make sure that we provide the best environment for our kids, and that the outcome of that is that even if you don't have kids in the district, the sustainable community still puts you in the best possible situation long-term with whatever your exit strategy may be, whether it's to remain here until, you know, you pass on, or you decide to sell your home, or it's a legacy to someone else who's going to take that home. So I will end with that. If there's any other questions from this point, we have about 10 minutes. I do have, did the tax guy leave?
Yeah, I guess he.
Okay, because I had.
He was the.
But he also asked about the tax
Oh,
freeze.
did he?
And actually, Commissioner Evans did respond to me.
Prefab modular has been an idea that's being floated around lately. Can you talk to whether or not you've looked at that?
Oh my gosh. So absolutely, you have to look at that, right? Remember that the trailers that we added at Washington and Yannicott in 2016 were built by a modular company. Now those are temporary, but they are still built the same way. We are certainly well aware that modular construction is popular. Unfortunately, some of the information that's been put out is incorrect. So I'll try and backtrack a little bit and talk about that. I've been told that there have been assertions that other school districts, Mamaroneck, New York, Andover in Massachusetts, a district in Pennsylvania, have built schools, modular schools, that it's been completed in a period of months for half the cost. And I'm here to tell you that that is not true. We, not only does the Carabino Architects work consistent, I would say you how many school districts? 100 school districts in New Jersey where you look at that? I've only taken the time to speak to the superintendent in Mamaroneck, to speak to the Andover district, to talk to Triumph Construction, who built in Andover, to talk to Vanguard Construction, who built Pennsylvania and Hoboken. They are not permanent structures, number one. If you go on Vanguard's website, modular website, who again built the Hoboken, it says on the front page, this has a lifespan of about 25 years. That's about when our bond will end. So if that's what you want to plan for, if you want to plan to build this and then know that you have to do it again in 25 years, again, that's the community's decision. For us, we are looking at bricks and mortar, right? People say, oh, the buildings are 100 years old. What, you know, you're adding on to these 100-year-old buildings. And as somebody said at one of the candidate debates, if you were in school in Europe, we'd have baby buildings. They laugh when we say that. Our buildings, the infrastructure, we yearly do facilities checklist. We have a long-range facilities plan to continue working on that infrastructure. So we're not worried so much about what exists. We need to be able to offer a long-term solution. The other thing that's been said about modulars is that it's half the cost. That is not, again, I've met now with 3 modular companies, and again, I know that you always do this, and I'm happy to share the names of the companies, the quotes we've received. This is not just quick, you know, Google sound bites. The company that I met with the week before last told me it would be about 250 square feet, that it could only be 2 stories, that you could not do any of the multi-purpose space modularly, could not. To me, that kind of negates what we're trying to accomplish. And while you can do it maybe more quickly because it comes built, it is what people say. They are stacked, they are, you know, it looks nice and new, just the same way our trailers look nice and new. But even the permanent structures are never gonna be brick and mortar. And no, to somebody over here asked the question, no, they will not look like brick and mortar. And again, that's a choice.
Now, are
That's
they
a choice.
Attachable as?
They are attachable. They are attachable to a building. That is
I'd like to add
correct.
too, it's
Yeah.
not any less time. There's
Right, they
less-
still have to build it.
There's less time maybe at the site, but in terms of the overall schedule, it takes time to build it in the factory, because once our design is done, they have to produce shop drawings, the review process is different, they have to build it somewhere, and all these plants are in Pennsylvania. There used to be a lot more modular companies represented in New Jersey, they dwindled down considerably, there's only one or two that are really left. There's potentially a reason for that. You can't build big spaces, and they're better if you were doing a consistent plan, probably new, but once you have to touch and tie into things, if you deviate from their standard dimensions, then the cost of it.
And I want to say too, because I don't want to imply that those other modular programs in those districts we spoke to weren't proposed or happening. In Mamaroneck, New York, it was proposed. They had a 13% enrollment increase in 7 years. They literally had nowhere to put kids, and their immediate gut reaction was, oh my God, we've got to put something up and get these kids in. When they did their long-range strategic plan, they did their long-range facilities plan, they actually looked at instruction and education and the changes in the delivery of instruction. They pulled back on that modular model, and their referendum, their long-term referendum is for bricks and mortar. In Andover, Massachusetts, they did build a modular school, a full modular school. It's an early childhood center. And again, if you speak to them or go to their district website, you will find that they also have a referendum to add on to their high school and middle school. To be clear, when you're giving these other options, don't think that you still don't need a referendum. All you're doing is putting off that decision. All you're doing is saying, okay, we don't want to vote for it today, which is the same thing that seems to happen historically. You will be back in this room next year doing a referendum for modulars or whatever the next thing is. Please have confidence that this board, and I say this board because most of them have been consistent during this 6-year process, have literally, I'm not exaggerating, 40 options. You have experts, you have people that do this work. We do take the time to do the research. We're not just taking sound bites.
That's what they said the last time, too.
We weren't the same people the last time, and I'd be happy to go through that with you again, separately or with coffee, or over coffee.
Let me just talk about the last time, 1 second, please.
You aren't allowed, were you on the board? Were you on the board for any part of it last time?
No, I wasn't on the board, not at all.
Okay,
I
I
was
just
in
want
the
to make
construction
sure.
office.
That's why I say I want to
was in
make
the
sure.
construction office.
I don't, but I don't
I
want to.
wasn't on the board, I was in the construction office, I wrote all the violations, over 130 of them, even when they set Franklin, the middle school on fire while they were building it. So I've lived through all of that. I just want to state that the board that was here then, you hear about all these RFPs and the civil engineers and managers, they had a relationship to the contractor, they had a relationship to the lawyer, they had a lawyer to be the project manager.
That was not me, by the way.
Wasn't But they hired a lawyer related, and I was on the other side when they went to put a barrel roof on. They were saying, why are we doing this? We can never expand the building. They wanted to go to barrel roof. That was a totally different board. I ran because when I left, I was in the legislature first. I came back to the board because we were still under lawsuits and other problems from that, and I lived it, so I came back to be here to correct it. We fixed the bidding regulations. We fixed the way we do RFPs because we were under an Attorney General's violation. I just wanted to clarify, I can't hear about the old anymore, I'm sorry.
No, and just to be clear, Fred is not one of your Board of Education candidates, and that's
No,
why
I'm not.
he is not. So we
I'm not
just
up for
want to make
election, so
sure
I'm
we're
not trying to do
not
anything.
violating any of our policies. Carol, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all.
She just had her hand raised.
Yeah, from two different aspects. First of all, from my educational background, I just want to say that the plans that you've developed and everything, a lot of time went into them, and I think the plans are good plans. From a taxpayer point of view, as a resident here in the town, It's a lot of money.
It is.
It's a lot of money. I took the time, since the last time I was here, to calculate the cost per household. I'd be happy to share that with anybody if my figures are correct, because I kind of did it quickly. It's a lot of money. It sounds like it's not. It's $1 a day for 25 years though, and you total that out, your cost, it's a lot of money per household. And the other issue is, we, here in Nutley, we have high taxes. The federal government has put that cap. We can't take more than the $10,000 in our deduction.
That's correct.
So anything that's added on to us is trickling down to our federal tax debt that
So-
we each
Okay.
and so, you know,
We are-
it's a
we
lot
know.
that everybody needs to consider. And I just feel like right now, we only had 2 public meetings for this.
We've had
We're-
60 public meetings
Well,
on these plans.
No, not for the general public. If you had 60 meetings, where were they since this plan?
But this is the same plan, just
No,
broken
it
into
isn't.
2
It's
questions.
different.
Slightly different.
It's
It was-
different.
Yeah, right.
And we only had 2.
We are creating the same instructional space.
But we only had 2 meetings public for the general public. You may have gone to the PTOs and other places. We were not invited to that.
Right,
That's for
right.
PTO. We've only had 2 meetings for people to come forward and present other ideas, like this modular,
We've
like
had
Green
we've had
Acres.
7 meetings.
Yeah,
This is
last
the,
year.
but it's all the same.
So-
And Green Acres too. I just want to say one thing, because I think that you don't maybe realize that all of the people proposing this are also taxpayers.
I understand
Also, all
that.
of those
We
people
understand
also
that.
have an impact. It's not that we are saying, oh, it's no big deal. We recognize that it's a big deal. The problem is this. Every time we put it off, last year's referendum went down, we did make changes, we cut out money, the interest rates go up, the cost of the project does not go down. This issue, this problem is not going away. So we could do 60 more meetings, say the same thing, you'll still feel, that the taxes are very high in Essex County and the federal
But you'll
impact,
have
all
to
of
make
those things are
changes.
too.
You have
What
to
I-
make more changes.
Here's
So-
the thing.
So here, and let me
You
just
go.
finish.
Yeah, you
And
go.
we'll probably close out with this because we're close to that
That's
time.
true,
that-
it's almost.
And we never
We can
have
all,
enough time
we can
for
all appreciate,
questions and answers.
we can
We're
all
stay all day, we
appreciate,
just want to honor everybody.
we can all appreciate everyone's position on what they may or may not do on November 6th with regard to solving the school issue. Okay, and I can appreciate your position. I hope that you could appreciate my position. And at this point, and where we are now, with all of the work that we've done since last year, okay, with putting this out, making sure the information was available on our website, everyone needs to make a decision. And so, as much as you're concerned of, the plan solves the problem, from what I hear from you, is that this plan, based on the data that we've put out, solves the problem, right? Is that?
It's a
Well,
good
We
plan.
can agree on
I'm
that.
not
Yeah.
disagreeing that.
It's
It's
a
a
Okay.
good plan, we're
So-
not saying it
okay,
solves
so-
it, it's a good plan.
Okay, so it's a good plan. So just the fact that it is a good plan, and everybody in this room may believe it's a good plan. The next step of that is, you have to give us the guidance of what's gonna happen after this. So as an individual person living in this community, you have a right to voice your opinion here, which we've all listened to. You also have a right that on November 6th, you're gonna make a decision on which direction you think is appropriate. And what I will say is that if you believe that this is a good plan, right? And the alternative plans that you may be thinking about, which over the past 300 or probably 400 days has not come to light as being an alternative or something that we haven't vetted already, then you have to make a personal decision as to whether or not there's enough value against any other solution that we haven't vetted or apparently hasn't been talked about. We've talked about modulars, and we're gonna take out debt potentially because we still have to ask for money from the community. So if we go with these permanent modulars that have a lifespan of 25 years, that's gonna be over at the same time. We now have buildings that were temporary, although we all consider them permanent because it's 25 years. We're gonna have to replace them again. We're gonna be right back to where we are. It's gonna be a new generation of people trying to solve the same problem. It does, I'm sorry, it just does not provide enough equity for me to say that, having a 100-year building infrastructure seems to make a lot more sense to me. And I can tell you the constituents of this community that have been in this position to vet this out over the past 6 years have all come to the same page that if there was a less expensive alternative, it would have been before all of you. And that this is what we believe to be the best solution for the longest period of time for sustainability in the community. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming out.
And we'll
take-
stay and answer your
Yeah,
questions.
yeah,
We just
quick
want
question.
people, you can stay, we just want people who feel like they want to go.
But-
How many
Yes,
teachers
right.
is this gonna add to the system?
So, that's a great, no, that's a great question, sir, thank you. So with the sixth grade moving, the sixth grade staff also goes to the middle school, that's not an addition. But we do need an additional administrator, guidance counselor, PE teacher, and possibly one of our half-time art teachers going to full-time. So that's what happens with the sixth grade going over to the middle school. As we budget, we do long-range budgeting. We do 5-year strategic budgeting. So we look at projected enrollment in general ed and special education. Remember, we have a 2% budget increase. So everything that we do, we have to be able to phase into the district budget. None of the staffing is part of a referendum. None of the staffing is part of any additional budget expense to the community. That's on us as part of our 5-year plan. And again, we've already identified what needs to happen with the sixth grades in the middle school. At the elementary levels, you already have staff that are in those buildings in non-instructional spaces or sharing spaces. So they actually move into classrooms, and that doesn't require additional teachers.
So the answer to the question is around 6 new teachers.
Well, they're
Or-
staff members, let's just say staff members.
That are covered in your operating.
Yes,
expense
that are
budget,
covered, that
not in
have
the capital
been,
investment.
that have been
Correct.
projected and are not a
Correct.
capital.
And that's part of the budget process, and that's part of what the Board of Education oversees. So when we look at those budgets each year, we also do a 5-year forecast to see what other impacts we're gonna need that we need to make sure that we account for into that long-range piece of the budget.
Thank you.
And again, we want to honor your time, so I know there are people that don't feel uncomfortable getting up and walking out. We'll stay and answer your questions, or you can join us over at the Pancake Palace. There is a pancake breakfast to benefit the library this morning. It goes until 2 o'clock. I was going to say, goes till 2 o'clock. You can join us there as well, or see you at the football game at 1:30.